In this video, we're going to take a look at the Graph Editor. The Graph Editor is another animation editor that allows us to visually see the motion of our animations in the form of a curve. Let's take a look. We're going to go to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And this brings up our Graph Editor window. And we do not have anything currently selected, so there's nothing inside of our graph. So I'll select the crow's base control there. And when that's chosen, I can now see all of the individual curves that make up my animation. And let's go full screen here. Basically, what the Graph Editor is doing is plotting out the animation on this graph. The bottom values show us the frames. So that's basically my timeline down there at the bottom. The left values over here show us the value of the key. So for instance, this red channel here, which is my rotate X, and this particular black dot is the key. If I select it, I can see that this is keyed at frame 37.64. It's got an odd number on there. And it has a value of 17.842. Basically stating that we've rotated this channel 17 units at frame 37. Now we can manipulate our keys here as well, which will directly affect our animation. Let's just minimize that up and we'll move out to this particular frame right here. And I'm going to use my step back so I'm right on that key, just so that the red bar lines up correctly. And with that key selected, I'm going to middle mouse and drag. And now I'm directly affecting the rotate X at this particular frame. And I can move that keyframe and you can see that it's altering the rotation of it because now that curve is moving out in the graph. And let's just return it back. And let's go full screen here again. So that's our work area inside there. Off to the left, we have all of our nodes that are currently selected displayed here. We can expand or collapse the individual channels that we see. And that one is the hierarchy. I'm going to just choose the outer button there just to display the individual channels of the object that is animated. And we also have a tack there that allows us to pin that channel, prevent it from being animated. I'm going to leave that off. Now this interface here is very similar to our outliner, and we can expand it if need be by clicking on the bar with the dotted lines here. And just like with the outliner, we can set it so that we have a split view as well. So if we have lots of items in here, we can then focus both of these on different areas. We'll keep it simple and just drag that back down and collapse that there. So we're just looking at the three animated channels of the crow control. Now across the top, we have our menus, and then we have a row of icons to access a lot of the more commonly used features that we would normally find up here in our menus. Now each of our keys have some components to them. So the keyframe itself is the black dot. If we select it, we get the yellow dot. And let's just zoom up to it here. And we also have a handle that we're allowed to manipulate to change how the interpolation goes from one key to the next. So for instance, if I select the left handle and then middle mouse, I can then move or affect the actual curve. And this will change how the values are interpolated from this key, from frame 13 to frame 25. Now you're also going to see that it will alter what happens up the chain here up to the next keyframe. But we are allowed to break that curvature so that it only affects a certain area. We can do this by breaking the tangent, and this is our tangent line here. If I go up to the top, we have break tangents, and you'll see the color change there. Now, when I select and middle mouse, I get only one side of my curve being altered. Same thing here, we can just alter the top. Now we do want to be careful with this. This will create a bump in our animation. So if I did something like that, it would be nice and smooth, and then all of a sudden, bang, it's going to really rotate very quickly as it tries to hit that value that the curve now sits at. To unify those tangents back together, we can click the next icon, which unifies the tangents. And then we can also set them back to a more default view by using any one of these here. Now, these will alter the way that the tangent is interpolated as well. The first one is auto tangent, and if I click on that there, you can see it was returned back to its default position when we first started. We have several different types of tangents that we can manipulate here. We can take a single key and flatten the tangent. This would cause the animation to rotate and then slowly ease into a stopping position and then ease back into motion. Or we can step our tangents. And let me undo that there, and let's select the entire channel and change that to a step. And this is really good for previewing your animation, just making sure that your animation is hitting the proper marks. So with this, we do not get any real interpolation between each key. What will happen is that it will go from one key, be still, until it hits the next key, and then you'll see it pop into position. And let's go back to our auto tangent. Now, in addition to translating or moving our keys, we can also scale them. I'm going to select all of those keys and hit R on the keyboard to access our scale shortcut. And now with scale, wherever I middle mouse is where it will scale from. So you can see I get a black crosshair there with a little cube. And that is where the scale is actually taking place. So it's scaling outward from this point. Let's undo that. And if I go back to here, if I wanted to extend this animation and make it longer going down the timeline, I'll middle mouse and drag, and then it will drag into that direction and scale those keys accordingly. Now, whenever we do scale, we're going to get keys that are not locked to a specific keyframe. We'll look at how to fix that here in a second. Let's undo that and just take a look at the other direction. We can also scale up or down, but if I middle mouse, notice that there's like a question mark there. Maya's waiting for us to make a move. Once it does move, it locks it into position. So now I'm only scaling in an up or down direction, and if I move side to side, it's not scaling down the timeline anymore. It'll only go up and down. Now this also works with our move tool. If I middle mouse and drag, switch over to move there. If I hold shift and middle mouse and drag, we're then locked to a specific value along my timeline. If I again hold shift and drag from left to right, we'll be locked to the value as we move along the timeline. And let's undo that and reset it. Now up at the top here, we can lock our frames to the time or to a value, and this will just make sure that they always round off. But again, when we scale, this does not get obeyed. So our keyframes can actually get positioned off of the keyframe value, so it's not a whole number. We can fix this though kind of globally by selecting all of our keys, go to Edit, and choose Snap, and we'll just open those options. And we can do snap times to a multiple of 1, and we only want to snap the times, but we could do values or both, and we'll just hit Apply. And you can see that those shifted just a little bit, and we'll close that. And now if I look back here at this key, it's now sitting right at frame 25. This keyframe value is now sitting right there at frame 38. So now we can lock those off and round them. That makes it a little bit easier to work and not have our keyframes at some random floating point value.